Hi everyone, welcome to Things Lucy Reads. I'm Luce and this is my autumn reading wrap up. So in this video I will be talking about all of the books that I read in the months of March, April and May, and it's mostly series, which makes it very easy for me. So in March I read Rogue Protocol, Exit Strategy and Network Effect, all by Martha Wells, and I read them as audiobooks. And then in April I listened to the audiobook of the next book in the series, Fugitive Telemetry, twice. And then in May I read the novella that goes with this series, which is called Home, Habitat, Range, Niche, Territory, and that one was my book for the Buzzword-a-thon for May. I'm pretty sure the word was home, so that worked out really well, and I'd read that and then I checked what the buzzword was and it fit, so I was already done, so that was wonderful. So this year I have been rereading the Murderbot series in audio form. I have acquired all of the audiobooks and have been listening to them because I haven't had a lot of brain space for reading. So at this point, like a lot of my reading has been either graphic novels or audiobooks because I just haven't had a lot of extra space in my brain for sitting down with a book with words and reading with my eyes. I really love this series. My feelings for it are enduring and unconditional. If you've been living under a rock and you don't know what this series is about, there's this human bot construct called a sec unit. And in the first book, which is called All Systems Red, which I did not read in this 3-month block, but read last month, we find out pretty early on that they have hacked their governor module, which is the thing inside them that keeps their behavior in check, which is installed by the company that owns them, and then they are then rented out to scientific like excursions. What's the word? I can't think of the word. That lent out to groups as security, and the governor module is what controls it and tells it what to do. It gives it parameters of behavior that it has to follow. But it malfunctioned once, and as a direct result of that, they killed their human clients and had to have their memory wiped. So once they came back from that, they hacked the module so that they could then kill all humans of their own volition. But what actually happened was they discovered the streaming entertainment feed, just started watching that instead, specifically a show called The Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon, which honestly sounds incredible and I wish it really existed because I really want to watch it. So they end up freed from ownership by the company and they go off on a quest to discover what really happened that time when they murdered all of their clients, to get to the bottom of it, to get to the truth of it, to find out if the company ordered them to do it or if it was some outside influence, and just to try and find some closure for themselves. They make a lot of friends along the way. They begrudgingly acknowledge that the humans from the first book have a special place in their internal workings, and it's just honestly so wonderful. Murderbot is snarky and sarcastic and pretends that it doesn't care about people, but actually it cares about people a lot, and it's just very relatable in that all it really wants to do is sit down and watch its shows and not be bothered by anyone and not talk to anyone and not have to think about its feelings. And I want to be Murderbot. Yeah, so it's been such a joy to revisit this series and to read them like pretty much one after the other and to get that continuity going, and it was just such an enjoyable experience, and I gave every single book in this series 5 stars. The novella is actually told from the point of view of Dr. Mensah, which I thought was incredible because even though she's in several of the books, we don't actually get her point of view. So it was wonderful to see the things from her side, and I was really grateful that we got that insight into her character and how she felt about the events that had happened. And I hope that in the subsequent books she pops up more often. And then also in April, I listened to the audiobook of Educated by Tara Westover, which I borrowed from my library. This book was really big on BookTube a couple of years ago. It's about this woman who grew up in a family of doomsday preppers, and her father didn't like school, didn't like banks, didn't trust the government or hospitals or pretty much anyone. By the end of the book, fancied himself some kind of prophet. And it was just a really intricate glimpse into a really wild world that I knew existed, but that I'd had no real knowledge or experience of, even through fiction. Not that this is fiction, it's a memoir, like it actually happened to Tara Westover. And this girl didn't have a birth certificate until she was a teenager. She barely went to regular school, but she was able to go to Cambridge and to get herself out of this batshit world that she'd been raised in, even though it cost her a lot of her relationships with a lot of her family. And it was harrowing to read, but because you know that she's already out of it and that she's made a life for herself that she's satisfied and happy with, made it a little easier to bear all of the terrible things that happened. Like, she was abused by one of her brothers. Her father kept putting all of his kids in the line of serious injury, even knowing that they weren't going to go and get professional medical help. If something bad happened to them, he was going to put them in anyway. And just, it was just wild. It was wild. But like, honestly, I was just so weirdly proud of her for the whole book, for the way she was able to go back and look at situations and say, okay, this is how I thought about it at the time, but since then I've been in therapy, I've trained myself out of this way of thinking, and here's what was really going on. And it was just so good. And if you can stomach reading a book where literal children are put into the line of danger and parents would rather turn the other cheek than to acknowledge them that one of their sons is a raging abusive dickhead, then it's really, really worth the read. And in my opinion, the popularity it achieved on BookTube was well deserved, because I loved this book. I can fully understand why other people loved it as well, and I'm so glad that I was able to read it. So in May, the first book I'm going to talk about is Cobalt Squadron by Elizabeth Wein, which is a Star Wars tie-in novel following the Tico sisters, Rose and Paige. Unfortunately, this book was so flat and boring that not even the presence of Rose and Paige could salvage it for me. I'm struggling to reconcile the fact that Elizabeth Wein wrote this book and also the universally loved and lauded Codename Verity, because in my mind, these two facts just do not compute. It is nowhere near as exciting as I would expect a book about a covert resistance mission to be. And I'm really devastated that Paige and Rose continue to be shafted by Lucasfilm. They deserved a better book than this. And look, it's probably not objectively bad. I just didn't like it. I just thought it was boring. We didn't learn anything about Rose and Paige that we didn't already know. It was repetitive. You couldn't even go 5 pages without mentioning the pendant that they both wear and explaining to you once again that it was made from Hazian smelt, which is an ore mined from their planet Haze Minor, which is a twin planet with the planet Haze Major, and it was destroyed by the Empire, and they loved living there with their parents, but their parents got them out, and they both have these matching I fucking know about the necklaces. I knew about those necklaces within the first half an hour of The Last Jedi. We know about them. You do not have to waste words telling me every time it's mentioned that they wear a necklace the entire fucking history of Haze Minor and its smelt. I really don't care. And the other thing that Elizabeth Wein kept doing was, Rose and Paige were in Cobalt Squadron and they had a squadron commander who was subordinate to General Organa, obviously. Squadron and their squadron leader and Leia would be in a room having a briefing or a debriefing, and Leia would ask a direct question to someone in the squadron, and that person would then look to their squadron leader for permission to reply to a direct question from the leader of the entire fucking resistance. I'm pretty sure that's not how the military actually works. The fucking general asks you a question, you answer it, and you don't need your squadron commander, who is subordinate to this general, to go, oh yeah, it's okay, you can speak. The general asked you a question. It just drove me up the wall, and it happened more than once, and so many things about this book just pulled me out of the story, because I was like, what? Why are you making these choices? Stop telling me about the pendant. Stop wasting time having the characters ask permission that they don't need. Just get on with the book. So my parents came home while I was in the middle of filming this last time. So here I am on a different day, because The energy of this book was very much like she wrote the whole book and got to the end and it was good, it was punchy, we got to the point, and the word count wasn't quite enough. So she went back and she padded it out. You know that quote from The Emperor's New Groove? That's what it felt like every time with the necklaces. Ah yes, the Hazian smelt pendant. The pendant made of Hazian smelt. The pendant's made specifically for Rose and Paige out of Hazian smelt. I know that repetition is like a literary device, and that's fine, and it's used very well in a lot of cases. This was not one of them. I was disappointed in this book, and I'm tired of talking about it. I read it for a secret TBR, but even when I get around to filming the video for that, I will not go into this again because I'm tired. I'm tired of it. I've talked about it in 2 videos now. That's more than enough. I hope that Rebecca Roanhorse will do Rose the justice that she deserves and will write her well in Resistance Reborn, because like Leia and Obi-Wan Kenobi, that book is my last hope. The next book I'm going to talk about is the book Maiden and Princess by Daniel Hack, which is a children's book about 2 princesses, obviously. This one princess goes to a ball and she's supposed to dance with the prince, but she's not really interested in the prince, and then she meets his sister who's like an astronomer and she's much more exciting. I preemptively borrowed it from my friend Chiara, which means I bought it for her birthday, and then I read it before I sent it to her, and I gave it I think 4 stars. And maybe it's just that I'm too old, but I'm just not really blown away by most queer children's books that I read, even though they are queer, notable exceptions being Ogilvy and Introducing Teddy by Jessica Walton, which I adored. Something important to note about Maiden and Princess though is that both of the princesses are women of color, which is great. I'm not knocking this book at all, like it's fine, and I gave it 4 stars. I just wasn't blown away by it, and I'm glad that I didn't buy it for myself, because if you like it then great, I'm really happy for you. It didn't really do anything for me. And then the last few books that I read in the autumn were volumes 1 through 6 of Bloom Into You, which I did read for another video where I will go more in depth about my thoughts, but suffice it to say I really love it. I've now finished the whole thing and it was incredible. It took me about 3 volumes to be really invested and really sure that I wanted to stick it out to the end and that I was going to enjoy it. These first ones, everything's all a little bit up in the air and you're not too sure what the characters are going to be like, what the motivation's going to be like, if the main relationship is going to stray into somewhat unhealthy territory, but luckily it never does, and all of the characters just have really incredible like growth and space to feel their feelings and express their feelings, but without falling into any like negative stereotypes of teenage girls expressing and receiving feelings. If you read the book you'll know what I mean. There are love confessions, most of them are turned down. It's handled phenomenally well in every single instance, and it's just great, and I just loved it. The whole series is incredible, definitely worth checking out because it was just so good and it's so worth it. And like the emotional payoff for you as a reader as you see these characters grow and come into themselves is just immense, and it was incredible, and I'm really glad that I gave it a shot. And those are all of the books that I've read in the autumn this year. If you have read any of them and you would like to let me know what you thought of them, feel free to leave me a comment down below. If you got to the end of this video and you just want to tell me that you made it, leave me an emoji heart in your favorite color and I will know that you were here. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in my next one. Bye for now.